The next segment here is about the decimal numbers. How well you have learned about the decimal number in your grade 6 also, in your grade 5th also. You must be aware of what are decimal numbers. So first we need to know that through an example. You all know this base value chart, right? You have done in your grade 5 as well, grade 6 also. So here you can see the integer part. Every decimal number is divided into the two parts, right? Few numbers written before decimal, few numbers written after the decimal. And the number which are written before the decimal are termed as integer part, and the numbers or the digits which are written after the decimal are called as the decimal part. They forms a whole decimal part. Also we know here that since the decimal lies here, this is the decimal line, that means we will write decimal over here, and to the left we always starts from ones, or we also call it units also. Now ones means multiplied by 1. Similarly, when we proceed to the left side, we have tens, hundreds, thousands and so on. So tens stands for multiplying by 10, 100 means 100 times of something, 1000 is 1000 times, and times means product or multiply. But if we move to the right hand side from the decimal, then what happen? We have to do the division, okay? And remember that to the left it is ones, but to the right it is tenth. We always start from tenth, the first place just next to the decimal, and tenth stands for 1 upon 10. Hundredth stand for 1 over 100. Thousandth stand for 1 over 1000 and so on. Let us see with some examples here. So, in this case, suppose if I give you an example that 752.234. How can I write this number in an expanded form? So here I have written 752.234 as 7 times 100. See, if I want to write the place values or the places and the periods, these are three different words which I have used here: places, place value and the periods. This can be easily cleared from the previous slide what we have seen. I'll just relate here with the word place. Now, to the left of decimal is the ones or the units place. Then to the left we have the tens place. Then to the left we have the hundreds place. Okay. To the right we have the tenth, and I am representing it with a small letter because it is division. Similarly, it is hundredth and it is thousandth. Now, just very simple thing, since the place of 7 is 100, I am multiplying 7 by 100. Next, the place of 5 is 10. So, I am multiplying 5 by 10. Now, the place of 2 here is ones or unit. So, I am multiplying 2 by 1. Now, proceeding to the right hand side. The place of 2 is tenth. That means I am now supposed to divide, or we can say multiply 2 by 1 upon 10. I said dividing 2 by 10 or multiplying 2 by 1 upon 10. You know this thing. Divide 2 by 10 is same as if I multiply by reciprocal of 10, and reciprocal of 10 is 1 over 10. Right? So, if we move on to the right side of decimal, we are actually dividing the digits there. Right? So, 3 is to be multiplied by 1 upon 100. That means I am dividing by 100. Similarly, 4 is to be multiplied by 1 over 1000. Or we can say we are dividing 4 by 1000. So, very simple, if you are dividing by 1000 or you are multiplying by 1 over 1000, because you are actually doing here the reciprocal and then you are multiplying. So, same thing is here, which is I think now more clear to you how to write in an expanded form if any decimal number is given to you. Now, let us take an example to understand this concept of decimals in a much better way. Suppose there is a stationery shop, and if I take a introductory problem here as Ram and Sohan went to market to buy some pencils. Okay, and the total cost of pencils is rupees 75.05. Ram had 39.55 rupees in his pocket and Sohan has rupees 39.26 in his pocket. So, who is having more amount, or is the total amount with them enough to get the two pencils, to get the pencils or not? So, here from this problem, what actually we want to see? Just see what is the total amount they both are having. We can see Ram is having 39.55 rupees and Sohan is having an amount of 39.26, right? So, the total amount which they both together are having is how much? Let me add them together. So, I have 8. Always remember, whenever we are adding or subtracting, we need to write decimal below the decimal number, okay? Whether it is addition or whether it is subtraction, we have to first rearrange or arrange these numbers. Then let's see, if I add further, I have 18, 1 as a carry, then 78.81. Together they are having 78.81 rupees and the pencil costs rupees 75.05. So, will they be able to buy or will they be able to purchase the pencils? Of course, yes, they can easily purchase the pencil. So, here what actually we have done? We have done an operation of addition among the decimal numbers. So, as we can add whole numbers, as we can add integers, as we can add fractions also, in the same way we can add the decimal numbers, we can subtract the decimal numbers, we can multiply the decimal numbers and we can divide the decimal numbers also. And in the next segments we will learn how to do all these operations on decimal numbers. But before this, some practice questions for you for comparison of numbers like 45.67 and 40.67. So, remember, if I relate before this question, if I relate one more thing from this particular problem, let's see who is having more amount, whether Ram who is having 39.55 or Sohan who is having 39.26. So, what you can do is you will compare their first the integral parts, right? Just check, this is for Ram and this is for Sohan, and the integral parts of the amount which they have, they both are having 39 rupees. So, here I see that the integral part is equal. Now, what is to be done? We will move on one by one step to the right hand side. For example, first we will compare 5 and 2 which are present on the 10th place, and here we see 5 is greater than 2, right? 5 is greater than 2. It shows that the complete number 39.55, that means the amount which Ram was having is greater than the amount which is with Sohan. So, we can see how we can even compare the decimal numbers as well. Here, because we always start from the integral part first and then we move on to the decimal part. But in the decimal part, we move from one by one places. Now, let us move to those questions which were given as a practice to you. You can just check here. In this cases, if I say 45.67 and if I want to compare 40.67. So, just compare the integral parts, very simple, 45 or 40, which is greater. So, you know 45 is greater, that means the complete number 45.67 will be greater than 40.67. No need to see the decimal part now, just compare the integral parts. We compare the decimal parts only when the integral parts are same. For example, in the second part, we have 560 as the integral part, similarly 560 as the integral part. Now, both the integral parts are equal. So, we will compare the decimal parts and we will compare single digit at a time. That means, we will first compare 7 That means the first digit to the right and first digit to the right here. So we see that 8 is greater. That means without any ifs or buts, we can simply say the number 560.89 will be greater than this number written on the left side. One more example, 670 equal. Again compare 5 and 6. So yes, 6 is greater. That means this part will be greater. And I am leaving up this question to you. You can compare if we can say 12 and 12 are equal, 3 and 3 are equal. So what will you compare? You will compare the next digits now, right? You can compare 4 and 5, which is greater. 5 is greater. So we will say the number 12.35 will be greater than 12.34. Right? So do different comparisons, assume certain decimal numbers on your own and compare it on your own as well. Moving on to the next part, that is division of decimal numbers. Let's see, if I give you a conversion, like write 25 centimeter into meter, we already are aware of this. So as we know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeter, so 1 centimeter will be equal to what? That will be 1 over 100 meters, right? We know that we can easily divide it by 100 because here 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So if I write 1, this 100 will come in this side and will be divided, right? So 25 centimeter will be equal to how much? You will say it will be 25 over 100, that is 0.25. Now, let us start with the addition of some decimal numbers. So, how can we proceed here? Let's see an example like 25.67 and 67.55. Remember, I am not saying 67.55 because the digits after the decimal are pronounced as single digit at a time, that is 67.55. Now, when we add them together, we have to arrange decimal below the decimal and then just add as you usually add the numbers. For example, 7 plus 5 gives you 12. So you have 1 as a carry over here, then 6 and 1 7 and 5 again 12, 1 carry, 7 and 5 12 and 1 13, 1 carry, and you get the result as 93.22. Very simple way. Also, if with one more example I take, that is 234.09 and 123.089. So remember here one thing, that there are 2 digits after decimal in the first number, right? You can see 2 digits, but in the second number there are 3 digits. So how it has to be done? I'll simply write, see, 234.09 is written here as it is, and if I'll arrange it in this manner, 234.09 and I'll write 123.089. There is no number, no digit written above 9. So we will replace it with a 0 and finally we will write it as 090, right? We won't add a 0 before here, means between a decimal and a 0 we won't write a 0. If we have to add, we will add it at the last, okay? And then just proceed as you used to do it, like 0 and 9, that gives you 9, 9 and 8 gives you 17, 1 carry over, then you add it and proceed in the same manner, okay? So in this way you have to do the addition. So the basic important step here is arrangement of decimal. It should be below the previous decimal here. Also, let's see the subtraction of decimals with some example here. When you have to subtract these two numbers, again the decimal is to be written below the decimal and we arrange the numbers and just do the normal subtraction as we used to do in the cases. Also, if there are 2 digits after a decimal in the first number and 3 in the second number, so we add a 0 at last. That means after 9 you can put a 0 and then continue with the normal division as we used to do. But what happens if we have to multiply the decimal numbers? Now, for multiplying the decimal numbers, let's take this question also. A mass of a jar of sweets is suppose 1.4 kilograms. Then what is the total mass of 7.5 such jars of sweets? So you know what you have to do simply. Since the mass of one jar is 1.4 kg and the mass of 7.5 jars will be 1.4 times 7.5. But in this question we come across that we have to multiply the decimal numbers, right? Both the numbers here are decimals. So how to multiply the decimal numbers? Let us see that. So now here from this particular grid we see that one part, if it is shaded out of 10, then it will represent 1 over 10. Now what if I divide this square instead of column in rows also? That means I make a grid of 10 by 10, that is rows as well as column. So here you can see 10 rows and 10 columns here, right? And we know 0.1 means what? 0.1 is 1 over 10. So if I multiply 1 over 10 by 1 over 10, I'll get simply 1 times 1, that is 1, and 10 times 10, that is 100. And 1 over 100 will be what? 0.01. Now how you got this 0.01? That is a question. So here if we see from this particular grid, we see that 1 is shaded in the column. And now if I take one row also, right, because we have to do multiplication. How we got this particular dot or why this is shaded only? So answer to this will be, if I take one row also which is shaded. So this particular block or this particular square, only one square is commonly shaded in the first column and the first row. First column out of 10 columns and first row out of the 10 rows. Okay. So here we can see, since one part is only common and out of how many squares it is? So it is out of 100 squares. There are 10 rows and 10 columns. So in all we can say there are 100 squares, small squares in this grid. So out of 100 there is only one part which is shaded. So I'll write it as one part is shaded out of 100 squares in all. So 1 over 100 will be what? It will be simply 0.01. That means here we are dividing by 100. And you know, when we divide by 100, what we have to do? The number becomes smaller, right? It becomes 100th time. And you can relate it with the place value chart as well. We know if it is a decimal, then on the right side we have the 10th place, on the next right we have the 100th place. So 1 should lie on the 100th place. And what about the 10th place? The 10th place should be filled with a 0 here. So the number now becomes 0.01. And since we can write before the decimal a 0, so the number becomes 0.01, which is the final answer over here. Now, moving on, we can say the dotted square is one part out of the 10 part which represent 1 upon 10 over 1 upon 10 times 1 upon 10 or 0.1 times 0.1. We have found that 100 small squares are there. So the dotted square here represent, the one with the dot will represent 1 out of 100, that is 0.01. So we can conclude here that 0.01 times 0.01 is nothing but it is 0.01.